good morning, afternoon, evening, whatever time it is that you're tuning into this, ladies and gentlemen, and everything in between. This is the introductory episode to Almanac of Spooky Things. And this channel here, we're going to talk about all things paranormal. Uploads are normally going to be on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. We're going to talk about UFOs, cryptids, true crimes, conspiracies, and I'll have a certain date for each one of those once I get the channel 100% up and running. So today I am going to discuss and give you some information on the 1977 Colares Brazil UFO incidents. So a little background on this. It lasted from April of 1977 to December of 1978. There was an actual total of 35 injuries and 2 deaths from the attacks, official figures. And this was not the first time that Brazil has had UFO events. However, none have really been quite this aggressive towards the citizens of the area. Now, there were other UFO events in Brazil in 1947, 1952, 1957, 58, 1966. Particular incidents I'm speaking of now of Colares 77 and 78. There was incidents in 79, 80, 86, 96, 2008, and 2013. Now, in the 1996 incidents, there were several witnesses that reported actual aliens walking through the streets. Now, these events actually started happening in April of 1977, and it actually started in the island of the Crabs. There was an incident where there were some fishermen shortly after midnight sat in their small boat, and an intense light approached them and came on the boat. Now, according to the official statement, the incident would cause 2 of the fishermen receiving terrible injuries, while the third would die. Now, from this, events and activity would actually build significantly. So this was only the first of many incidents in and around the Colares region. Now, by June of 1977, several newspapers had picked up on the incidents, and they would talk about how strange the sightings were, and how it was causing a lot of panic among the population. Now, the witnesses were saying that the crafts would stun them with light and then suck their blood out, which led to them being referred to as chupa chupas, which I'll get to, further on down the line. Now, the sightings went in phases. So the next thing that I'm going to discuss is what's called the Garupi phase sightings. Now, these were actually alleged to have the blood-sucking crafts. Now, there was a newspaper called the Jornal de Bahia newspaper in July 77 report that the flying objects was sucking blood from the population, and they also called it a vampire light. Now, in this instance here, in just July, they were stating that 2 local men died as a result from the bizarre blood sucking. Now this, according to my count, would be 3 people that were deceased already, as one of the fishermen in April were deceased because of it, and now 2 victims here in July. And in the Pinheiro region, there was a group of 26 workers that remained placing fences into the night. Now, one of the workers would take a trip to the river to fish so they can get dinner for everyone. Now, as the man stood on the bank, a blue light appeared overhead. He was immediately, quite frankly, scared and upset, and he left everything he had at the riverside and ran back to the group. Now, as he left and ran back to the group, the light followed him, and it said it stayed there for about 45 minutes. Now, at this point in time, sightings had been experienced by 90% of the local population. They were also they were becoming increasingly regular. And of course they were getting, quite aggressive. Now, one of the worst encounters took place in mid-July. One night a farm worker was walking to his friend's house when he felt a pain in the back of his leg. When he checked to see what it was, he noticed that there was a glowing yellow-white light. Now, he felt a sensation, and at the time he realized he couldn't move or anything like that. And this light was actually trying to pull him towards the craft. Now, the gentleman actually clung to the post of a fence where he was at. And then once he was, trying to hold on to keep from being drugged, to the ship by the light, the light appeared to loosen its grip a little, and after that he took shelter under a tree, and he watched as the object went higher into the sky. Now, when he got home and he checked his leg, it was black as if it had been completely burnt. In this particular case with this gentleman, the next day it was even worse. And his leg was full of blisters and he had infections. So this actually took him several days to recover from the initial injury, but for him to be 100%, it took almost 3 months. Now, the next phase of the incidents begin in August, in an area known as the Bay of the Sun. They were almost identical to the exact same things that happened in the Gurupi River in July. Now, there was several instances where people would get burnt from them or whatnot, and then they would slowly leave. But at this point in time, there was not another abduction attempt from the light like there was before. Now, by the time that September came, there was so many stories of what was going on in Colares that it was just a lot. And everyone was talking about the Chupa Chupa, which of course was the crafts that were attempting to abduct people with the light. Now, in this particular instance, in September, there was a notable event that took place, and that was, of course, another fisherman. And this actually was at Rio, or near Rio Novo Beach. And there was no sound coming from the craft. And then a white light shot out from the craft and then moved away. Now, on another occasion, there were 3 women that were actually struck in their breast area from the light, and it actually made visible markings on them, sort of like burns. Now, it was getting to the point that even someone that was smoking a cigarette would draw the attention of the crafts. Now, in October of 1977, there was actually a witness who stated that she could see not only the craft, but also that there were occupants in the craft. She described it as like a man. It had a jumpsuit on, just like a diver would. It said that they pointed an object at her, and she was struck three times in the chest. Now, following that incident, the young lady would suffer from headaches and weakness for several days, as well as the burn marks on her chest. She did say that it was hot and that it was like a needle stick. Now, on this, we are actually going to get into the military intervention of the Brazilian Air Force, and this operation was called Operation Plate. They would send the Regional Air Command to Colares, and what this did was this actually psychologically assisted the residents of the community, because they had the military there, and they were also offered help to help with the trauma. Now, the purpose of this investigation was for the research of the UFOs. The military also was able to take hundreds of pictures, and they did have 4 separate videos of the activity. Now, the military was actually surprised at what they seen. They said that the brightness of the lights were actually like stadium lights. That's how bright they were. And they would also state that they were basically directed with perfect precision. And there was even an occasion where one of their own military copters were forced to the ground by one of these lights, and we're not sure why or how, because there's no official record on this. But there were residents of the community that did witness the incident. And that lasted until January of 1978. Now, there was an investigation that would last until May, and that was basically in a private capacity. Now, the Brazilian military did make everything classified, but it wasn't until 2005, through a Freedom of Information request, that all the documents released to the public. Now, there were some things that were redacted, and that was how many victims actually did suffer burns, and the 2 deaths, that's actually debated at this point. And There's actually the person that was in charge of the regional air command. He said that it was taken, that the crafts appeared to be taking blood samples. Now that captain, he did speak out about it. He gave an interview about it, and then after that, after he gave the interview, less than 3 months, he actually committed suicide. So officially, there's not a suicide note or a reason for him to do that, but he did hang himself using his belt, allegedly. Now, of course, being the fact that this is involving UFOs, and of course maybe a possible cover-up, there are a lot of people that actually question whether or not he actually committed suicide or if he was murdered. And I will leave that up to the listener, because I don't have an opinion on that, as there is no evidence to actually what happened with that. So as far as this goes, it is acknowledged that there were unidentified objects that were in the air that were injuring people, that allegedly killed multiple people. And yeah, that is, as far as if this was an experiment, a government cover-up by, government aircraft, of course we cannot be sure. But I'll leave that up to the listener. And again, this is Almanac of Spooky Things. I promise I'll give you a better episode next time. And signing out, and have a good night.